The ocean is one of the most mysterious places. Various parts of it remain unexplored. The US Navy has recently come forward and announced that their equipment has picked up something mysterious moving at fast speeds under the ocean. The sonar data confirmed that the objects in question didn't match typical recordings they'd usually see, and happened around the same time as other strange reports. For years though, officials denied that these encounters were anything of interest. Now though, documents, testimonies and eyewitness reports have proven that these people were onto something, as various other pilots and Navy officials have said that there's mysterious crafts in our ocean. US submarines have detected mysterious underwater crafts, saying that they're travelling at hundreds of knots beneath the ocean, with Tom Rogan being one of the people who shared this story, saying that the United States Navy has data showing that submarines have detected a number of mysterious high-speed crafts, with them buzzing naval ships and then disappearing at fast speeds. Mr. Rogan said the following about the reports. I think what we may be looking at is a true unknown, which is to say intelligently controlled machinery that is not understood to be in the possession of the United States, China or Russia, which are the three most advanced countries in terms of military aviation. Researching this, there isn't anything that we have, top secret information about what China or Russia have, or what we have at any of our top secret installations that can do what these things do in terms of performance. In the coming months and years, an area we will learn more about is the interaction between US Navy submarines, nuclear ballistic submarines and attack submarines, picking up sonar contact of things moving at hundreds of knots under the ocean. So there's a sort of undersea dimension to this that the Navy has sort of pushed aside. This is in the wake as pilots talk more about their experiences. One of the things we're going to find is that over a period of decades, a lot of the data, a lot of the measurements of these things has been put off as a technical aberration, or essentially a data malfunction, because they didn't want to really admit that something very serious and special is going on. End quote. Researchers have said that the US Navy is well aware of what these objects are, and that at the moment they aren't releasing too much information about these things, with some amateur researchers saying that in the past Navy officials have detailed what they're picking up on, and have said that these mysterious crafts have been seen entering and exiting the ocean, have a form of propulsion that's unlike anything we have, are able to go under the ocean without making a splash, and can easily outmaneuver things like jets. Astronomer Mark D'Antonio was taken for a ride on an attack submarine, and during this the sub encountered an unknown fast-moving object on sonar. He said the following: "As a thank you for doing some work for them, the Navy asked me if I wanted to go for a ride in a submarine, so I said yes. Once we got under, I was sitting in the sonar station and the sonar operator was sitting right next to me. Submarines are loud. People think they're very quiet, and it's true they are on the outside, because the sound doesn't get out, but inside you hear fans and various other noises. It's a constant din on a sub. I was sitting there zoning out a little because I was seasick, and all of a sudden the sonar kid shouts fast mover, and I'm jolted awake, thinking what's happening, is it a torpedo? The executive officer comes in and the operator shows him the path of the object, and the officer says, how fast is that going? And the kid said several hundred knots. I start to lean forward to listen in, and the officer said, can you confirm it? So we went to another sonar machine and confirmed it wasn't a machine anomaly. It was real. I thought, wow, that's incredible. When the sonar guy said, what should I do with this? The officer said, log it and dog it. In other words, log it and bury it. 4 years later, Mark asked a senior naval figure about what he saw, saying the following: can you tell me about the fast mover program? He looked at me and said, sorry Mark, I can't talk about that program. So he basically confirmed to me that the program exists. There's definitely no shortage of these mysterious crafts, and recent comments by US officials have only caused people to demand answers for what these objects are. John Ratcliffe recently said the following: "We are talking about objects that frankly engage in actions that are difficult to explain, movements that are hard to replicate, that we don't have the technology for, or travelling at speeds that exceed the sound barrier without making a sonic boom." End quote. As of right now, people are still waiting on an official answer for what it was that the Navy encountered, along with other reports that come in from everyday people, including fishermen that spend large amounts of time on the ocean. Many of these eyewitnesses are just everyday people who've encountered something that they couldn't explain. What these objects are, and how they're able to achieve what they do, is still a mystery. For years, countless theories have been put forward for why past civilizations collapsed. A common theme that's seen around the world is that over 10,000 years ago, civilizations seem to have hit their peak. Göbekli Tepe, which is estimated to be around 12,000 years old, the ancient Egyptians, known for being masterful craftsmen, and Teotihuacan, which researchers have now said was abandoned due to an ice age. One idea for why these civilizations seemingly fell and were abandoned by people nearby was due to a large cataclysmic event. This event was given the name of the Younger Dryas, although it's important to note that many researchers didn't accept this idea, noting that we don't have enough evidence to prove that this happened. However, a new scientific paper that was published on the 5th of January 2022 revealed that this event did happen. The paper was submitted to the Scientific Progress Journal, and the abstract reads as follows: "The progress of science has sometimes been unjustifiably delayed by the premature rejection of a hypothesis, for which substantial evidence existed, and which later achieved consensus. Continental drift, meteorite impact cratering, and anthropogenic global warming are examples from the first half of the 20th century. This article presents evidence that the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis is a 21st century case. The hypothesis proposes that the airburst or impact of a comet 12,850 years ago caused the ensuing 1,200-year-long Younger Dryas cool period, and contributed to the extinction of the Pleistocene megafauna in the Western Hemisphere, and the disappearance of the Clovis Paleo-Indian culture. Soon after publication, a few scientists reported that they weren't able to replicate the critical evidence, and the scientific community at large came to reject the hypothesis. By today, however, many independent studies have reproduced that evidence at dozens of Younger Dryas sites. This article examines why scientists so readily accepted the early false claims of irreproducibility, and what lessons the premature rejection of the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis holds for science." End quote. This is big news, as many researchers have theorized that during the Younger Dryas it wasn't just dozens of animals that went extinct, but also various different cultures, with them saying that the event created a sort of global reset. This means that potentially dozens of advanced civilizations perished within a short amount of time, and our books are missing out on a huge chunk of history. Many praised the paper but were critical of modern scientists, saying that this type of behavior is seen far too often, where scientists will fail to look into something even though there's more than enough evidence. One scientist called Mr. Baker commented on this via social media. He said the following: "I'm a retired professor and I took part in some of these studies that looked into this event. And to me, the reason I came up with for why this didn't move forward as quickly as it should have came down to status and reputation. It seemed that many people didn't want to make that initial leap, and put their name to something without being 100% sure. I can understand why they did this, but then the question remains that if every scientist does this, it means that we're never going to move forward. And in turn, science suffers as a whole because people are worried about attaching themselves to something in fear of being wrong." End quote. This study doesn't just end with acceptance though. Back in 2010, other studies were submitted, and at the time they were cast aside by scientists, but they went into detail about how the Younger Dryas event actually caused large floods around our planet. And now that this study has substantial evidence to back up that this happened, it's likely that people will now be looking into other theories that directly happened due to the Younger Dryas event. One study said the following: the erosion surface and gravel suggest that at least 2 glacial outburst floods swept into the Arctic Ocean. End quote. Recent discoveries by underwater archaeologists suggest that this event ended up sinking many cities. One such finding was made off the coast of Turkey, where researchers found traces of ancient civilizations dating back since the time of Noah. One thing that's interesting is that many civilizations talk about a great flood, and some of these are even documented. Some scientists don't actually doubt that this happened, but have suggested that it may not have been as massive as it's made out. For example, one theory is that the Great Flood could have been the flooding of the Black Sea. Researchers have said that rising water levels happened in this region around 7,000 years ago. Again, scientists know that there was an event that sank cities. After all, several underwater ancient cities have been discovered in recent years. It's the magnitude of the event that people can't seem to agree on. Woods Hole Oceanic Institutions said the following about this alleged flood. Now, a new study in the January 2009 issue of Science Review suggests that if the flood actually occurred, it was much smaller, hardly of biblical proportions. Liviu Giosin of Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution and Florin Philip and Stefan Continescu found evidence that Black Sea and seawater levels rose only 5 to 10 meters, and this was around 9,400 years ago, not 50 to 60 meters as previously proposed. The flood would have drowned only around 2,000 square kilometers of land, rather than 70,000 square kilometers. End quote. Robert Ballard, one of the world's best-known underwater archaeologists, detailed his findings that were made in Turkey. His dive teams have been investigating areas around Turkey that date back to the time of Noah. Ballard has a great track record for making discoveries that others couldn't. In fact, going back to 1985, he and his team sent down some robotic rovers that were equipped with some of the best cameras around, and they were able to locate one of the most famous ships of all time, the Titanic. Since then, he's used these advanced underwater robots to answer some of the world's biggest questions, one of which is, did the Great Flood ever happen? He said the following: "Where I live in Connecticut, there is ice a mile above my house, all the way back to the North Pole, around 15 million kilometers. That's a big ice cube. But then it started to melt. We're talking about the floods of our living history. The question is, was there a mother of all floods? We went in there to look for the flood, not just a slow-moving, advancing rise of sea level, but a really big flood that then stayed. The land that went under stayed under." End quote. Ballard said that he thinks that his team were able to pinpoint a timeline for when this event happened, saying that it likely occurred around 5000 BC, and even some experts backed up these estimates, saying that this is likely when Noah's flood would have occurred. So what do you make of this new paper detailing that the Younger Dryas did happen? Be sure to leave your questions and answers in the comment section below, and help us to grow this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.